Calling to order the March 21st regular meeting of the Makiki Neighborhood Board. While it's officially a regular meeting, I will note that we made this a focus meeting. That's an informal term of our board, where we're attempting to keep most of the focus specifically on legislative matters for this month. With that in mind, we'll of course still have questions available for other agenda items. But if there are questions for, say, HPD, Honolulu Fire Department, et cetera, that can be taken aside or do not be publicly done, that would be hugely appreciated. We also do have a presentation from the Honolulu Police Department under the presentation segment. With that, I will take us to our first item on the agenda, the City and County of Honolulu monthly reports, starting with the Honolulu Fire Department. Are they with us? Okay, I'm hearing some issues. Okay, so it's just correct. All right, we're going to move on to the Honolulu Police Department.
Good evening and aloha, Chair Ross and everyone in attendance. Lieutenant Arnold Sugusa representing the Honolulu Police Department, District 1, Community Area Responsibility. Thank you guys for your time and patience. The information I'm going to provide to you today are the amount of cases for your particular area. For more specific statistical information, you guys can go to our HPD public website, www.honolulupd.org. Okay, the stats for this month of February 2024. So motor vehicle thefts are 16, which is down from the previous month of 23. Burglaries is 7. Previous was 8. Thefts are holding steady at 33. It was 33 for the previous month also. UMVs or car break-ins were 18. Previous to that was 24. Assault cases were 10. Previous 7. Sex assaults were 2. Previous was 0. Graffiti cases were 2. Previous month was 0. Drug offenses, drug-related offenses is 7. Previous is 2. Total cost for your area, total cost for service for your area was 2,123 compared to the previous month of 2,294. So it's actually down about 171 calls. So the safety tip awareness of for the month of March would be preventing UMVs or car break-ins because it's a particular offense that occurs a lot. We're asking our community members not to leave anything of great value in plain sight within their vehicles. An example, backpacks, purses, expensive sunglasses, loose cash, and coins. We suggest to place all items of value within their trunk and out of plain view. Another suggestion would be to always lock your car doors no matter how close you are to your vehicle. Sometimes we take it for granted that we're just running into the store or just running to the ATM to get some money. At this time, I'm going to yield back the rest of my time and take any questions from the board members and the public attendees.
Thank you so much. So we're going to open up to questions from board members first, then the public. Just to remind people again, if you're able to have the question offline, that would be helpful. But there are certain questions we really want to get on the record or have out there for public knowledge as well. With that, do we have any questions from board members at this time? Please go ahead, Janelle.
Thank you for joining us, Sergeant. I had a question in regards to the continuing homeless encampment that's growing on Lunalino and Pecoy. Is that like a continuous cleanup effort in addressing that? Because my area seems to be getting a lot more people that are screaming at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know what's going on with the homeless in the area.
Yeah, so with that being said, we're on District 1 is I'm going to be doing SPOs, SNOs on a regular basis. We're trying to get it to at least once a week. It's real difficult, just like I was saying in the previous meetings, the limited resources, and we're fighting for those resources because other districts and other areas in Honolulu and the rest of the island are utilizing the same DFM contacts and people. Yeah, so we're trying to get it to 4. At this point, we have it to 3. We're going to be continuously checking that area, and then when that area starts to get somewhat needs attention, we'll redirect all our assets to that location. Yeah, but just realize that there's other areas also asking for the same services. So we're trying our very best. We just want to make sure that we have some place for these people to go. And we know the revolving door situation where we go and clean up particular area and then they just kind of move right back. So it's yes, it is a continuous effort on our part. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
And
Thank
also,
you.
I've been actively reaching out to the city and state homelessness coordinators, and I'm trying to get them to come in the coming months. There's a possibility in April as well. So I just wanted to flag that for you as well. All right, thank you very much, Sergeant. Any other questions from board members? I saw Paul's hand up, and then we'll go over it.
Hi, Lieutenant. I just want to say thank you. I don't know what magic you pulled, but the parking situation on Heulu and Makiki Street seems to be completely mitigated. Everything's running smoothly, and there's very little dangerous action there now. I appreciate all your help, sir.
No problem, Paul. Just like I said, I check it often, and we'll address the situation as it arises.
It's working. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. I'll be listening on the side.
You're welcome.
All right, Richard?
Sergeant, is HPD tracking accidents around bike lanes, whether pedestrians, car and bikes, bikes and pedestrians? Is there a specific category for that?
Just realize some of these accidents are records only. So some of these collisions are minors. We consider them minors because they're less than 3,000, no injuries. So it's just pretty much an information transfer between the both parties, and then we forward it to they forward it to their particular insurance companies. Now, certain other types of collisions, especially the ones that serious bodily injury or something that we would have to call out the vehicular homicide unit to come out and help us and assist us in the investigation. Those we track fairly well. In regards to the total amount, it's a little difficult to grab all of that information because they actually go into two different pots. So those minor MVCs go to records, insurance, and it's just, that's like I say, it's an information transfer. The rest of the other things that get investigated by the vehicular traffic units, we can get that information also. So, but we have to extract that information. It's not like we press a button and it gives us all those numbers. Is there anything in particular you want to know about those bicycle lanes?
There's the incidence is increasing. Like I'm driving and I'm extra careful every time I go through a bike lane. As now with the electric bikes going so quickly, you can see it clear, but as I turn and make a left turn into a bike lane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
so that was-
so absolutely, we just want to remind our community members those green bike lanes is bi-directional. Yeah, so bicyclists or people that utilize that bike lane can move in both directions. So anytime you're going to end up crossing or traversing across those lanes, you should look over your shoulder and visually check, that a bicyclist hadn't pulled out onto the bike lane somewhere that you didn't see and stuff. So yes, but I haven't, in the past few months, we haven't seen any motor vehicle collisions or any involuntary contact with bicyclists in the bike lanes. I could be mistaken. Maybe it happens more during the day, but during the nighttime hours, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members at this time? Seeing none from board members, we're going to open it to the public. Anyone in person who has questions? If you do, please come up. Is it possible to come up? All right. Just a little bit closer and then the mic will be able to pick you up. I think that should be usually close enough.
So I know someone asked.
Can you hear her,
Hi,
Sergeant?
Lieutenant Cruz.
Lieutenant, pardon.
Hi. The homeless camp on Luna Liban Point. So, what she was saying, we passed by, today's Thursday, they got swept today. But when we passed by, it was so dirty. It was like, had a lot of rubbish still yet. And a few days ago, we were walking by, because us, we don't drive yet, so we walked to the store and come down. So there's these two new guys that are homeless, and they have their legs out. So they were blocking me where I couldn't get through, couldn't get access. And then finally, my daughter just went around, and then a guy sitting down in red shoes kind of like scooted, and then he tripped her. When he tripped her, luckily Shayna was pushing me, so she caught on to Shayna, right? But HPD didn't do anything about it because it's like that's that concern there. It's getting worse. Drugs are getting worse because they're all under the tents and the tarps. So, to let the, whoever had that question earlier. It's just, it's getting worse. Before it was only Tristan and, Melissa then, that was it. Yeah, it's getting chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah, so June, in regards to that, yeah, so that's exactly what we're dealing with, yeah. So a lot of these SPOs, SNOs, these cleanups as we call it, sometimes there is a lot of debris left behind, trash. So that is one of the things that we need to address, yeah. Let me get together with DFM and try to see if they can schedule maybe a power washing for that particular area, but I would have to run that through my command and have them forward it to the proper people on DFM. Now, in regards to those people that's possibly harassing you guys as you guys pass by, please just call 911. Let us address it. Sometimes we don't want you guys to, get involved in that way because it might escalate. Just let us come out there and then let the officers that service the call determine what they're gonna do. Now, in regards to the drug situation in the particular area, I know in the past we have notified Narco Vice in regards to that location, and they had done several operations. I won't speak of the officer's name because he's in Narco Vice. So, but I spoke with that person twice, and they did an operation there at the corner of Lunalilo and Pico, and as well as the Makiki Shopping Village. So that was also a concern. So I'll touch bases with somebody from Narco Vice once again and try to see if we can get someone out there to check it out.
There's a lot of paraphernalia on the sidewalk. So there was one that was white, and at the tip it was, the round part, it was brown. So if a child looked at it thinking it's a lollipop, like, ooh, got chocolate on top, or if a dog were to lick it and let's say had fentanyl.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So if you see something like that, just call 911, have the officers come out. We might have to, take it into custody or, get road crew out there to help clean that situation up. Yeah, depending on what is presented.
Yeah, and then another one, I'm so sorry, everybody. Because wheelchair access on certain streets is that there's so many cracks, and all kinds of stuff where my wheelchair actually broke. Even about it. But the other thing is, because the homeless block the sidewalk, there's no access. We have to go into the bike lane. You know how I tell you we gotta, especially on Pequot Street, when the homeless are blocking the sidewalk.
Yeah, totally understood. So if you can just contact 911 and have the officers come out there and address the situation. It's a day-to-day thing for us. However, in regards to the faulty sidewalks, cracks, I think I would defer that question to the city.
So it's by Lobster King. It's like this humongous tab-like thing that the person has.
I'll go ahead and write it down and I'll just see what I can do.
Good to see you. Thank
You too, ma'am.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. All right, do we have any additional questions from members of the audience? All right, hearing none, thank you very much for your report. We definitely appreciate all your work, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
We're gonna move on to Board of Water Supply now. Okay, I don't believe we're joined by Board of Water Supply. I will note, thank you everyone for keeping things moving quick. We're about 6:18. We'll be moving on to presentations. Please do let me know if you see fire department or water supply joining. We're gonna move on to HPD proposal to acquire property at 819 South Beretania. If you'd like to join us up here. Thank you. Okay. If we can share, let's put them, great, let's put them between members if we can.
Hi, my name is Lieutenant Barry Tong. I come out of the Support Services Bureau. The reason why we're here tonight is to give you guys a presentation. The Honolulu Police Department is, we're trying to procure the site at 819 South Beretania Street. For you guys that don't know where that is right across the street or right next door to the main station. So it's the old Royal Insurance building, and that's located right between, if everybody knows where Planned Parenthood is, it's between Planned Parenthood and our foundation, that whole property area is what we're trying to acquire. So, and the reason why we're trying to acquire it is we moved to the main police station in 1992. That point on, within the next couple of years, we have already outgrown that station. So we're at the point now where we're renting office spaces, and we're trying to put people wherever we can, wherever the city has extra room. So we have divisions and departments in all over Honolulu right now. So anytime there's a big meeting or anything, we have to bring people back to have those meetings. So with the purchase of the procurement of this property and us going to build another building over there that can house a lot of these entities that have left, that make us more responsible fiscally to bring everybody back and not have to pay rent outside. So the space is about 24,000 square feet. So that's pretty much what's happening. We just outgrew our place and we're trying to procure a place where we can actually build and pretty much an annex to our main police station.
So a little bit of ground up project building.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the process, we're negotiating with the property owners right now. They do have a demolition permit. So we're trying to demolition the property, have them demo the property, and then we're just gonna purchase it from them as a vacant land. With the
Timeline for this?
Timeline, if everything goes according to plan, we can hopefully try to purchase it sometime either the end of this year or probably by summer of next year. The wheels of city doesn't move very fast.
Do you think?
So, but any other questions that,
Continue to take questions from the board, and then we'll open up to the public as well. Please go ahead.
yes,
Cost of purchasing, this is just my general opinion, that the city often doesn't have a lot of, they can be kind of generous when they do things like this. That's coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. But that's just my general impression, Todd. So I know this is not in your ballpark, but I'm hoping that the city, when they negotiate the purchase, will put the taxpayers in mind.
yes. So we're trying to be fiscally responsible on that too. So we can't, being a government entity, we can't ask for like a cut rate deal because then that doesn't look good for us either. And then that brings up a lot of ethics problems, right? So we're looking at a fair market value. So, I mean, it's not like something, like, you can do me a favor, but I'll give you like an extra $3 million. No, we're not doing that. So it's under fair market value.
Thank you.
So, yes.
Great. I don't see any hands up online, but members are encouraged, if you're online, to raise your hands with questions. Any other questions from our board members? Please go ahead, Claude.
Is Strop competing with you for that property, or they're expanding too, right?
Yes, so in their 20-year plan, they already bought Hawaii Ballet Company, or the ballet studio, which is literally behind our station. So they already knocked that whole place down. And they're actually building their brand new building right now. So they're actually trying to buy up their whole block. So they're not competing with us right now because last that we know, they do not have the funding to purchase that property. They're putting all their eggs into their brand new building. But it's going to be a really big building. It's going to block our view with the But that's okay. That's what they need. That's what they get.
Very good. Okay, I don't see any more questions from in person or online from the board. So I'm going to open up to the rest of the public. Anyone else with questions? Please go ahead.
What's the appraised value?
Could you speak your name first?
Art Everhart, what's the appraised value? You gave us the.
The appraised value is $7.5 million. That's the appraised value. We just looked at it recently and the appraised value actually dropped to $7.2 million. So we're trying to negotiate at that lower rate. But like I said, we're trying to be responsible, so it's that fair market.
All right, seeing was your hand up? No. Seeing no others, thank you for keeping us appraised of what's going on here. Best of luck with your future extension plans.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're opening up into state legislative presentations next. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the format that we're going to be deploying here. After each of the two presentations we're about to have, we'll have a normal Q&A process. Board members first, the rest of the public afterwards. This is a time when you can ask a bit of lengthy questions if you want, but I remind you, questions end with a question mark. If you want to make a statement, like argue, I actually think this or something along those lines, you're very welcome to, but we're going to go really wide into a lot of issues. And that means we don't have the 3 minutes to talk about every single issue. So just keep that to like a 30-second remark. And to be really fair, I'll even give you a second 30-second remark if you feel like there was something that came up in the response. But I just can't let us have like 2-3 minutes at every point, right? But feel free to like voice your concerns. That's why we have it here. We're just going to break it up that way. When we get to our legislators, we're going to have all of the presentations. They're going to be allowed to talk about their priority bills, what they're thinking, what they're concerned about. We're going to get really in depth, and it's great because last month we didn't actually get any state legislative reports, so this is very warranted. We're going to do all the questions at the end. Instead of making the first presenter, Senator Fukunaga, have to take all of the questions that people have. Well, I'm going to fairly divvy it up between legislators as I think is maybe the right legislator to answer. And any of the legislators can then speak up if they think, no, actually, I have something else I want to add to that. And so that's how we're going to try to format that. We'll have questions coming in verbally. Thomas Baldwin will be sharing a link where we can take questions online and anonymously if they prefer to be. And that's how we're going to divide up that system. And so we're going to go into that format. So to start out, we're really should all be very grateful that the public access room in Keanu Young specifically is going to talk to us a little bit about where we're at in the legislative process and how we can all partake in the legislative process. Are you ready to take it away?
I am, Ian. Thanks for the invite. Good evening, board members. I'm going to share a presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the public access room and what we do, and talk about the legislative process from where we are in session. So let me just. Okay. All right. As mentioned again, I'm from the public access room, and
You might want to go into presenter mode, just a heads up.
oh, am I in presenter mode or?
No, you're not.
Okay. If I go into presenter mode, I think my notes will be on the bottom though. Is that?
I'll leave it to your discretion. I just wanted to make sure you knew what we were saying.
Okay. So you guys can see my screen though, right?
Not anymore.
You just stopped sharing your screen.
Okay, let me share again then. Go back. This is what happens at the Capitol with tech, sometimes with the tech issues. Can you guys see it now or no?
No.
Okay. Here, let me go back to share. I don't want to do that.
Daniel, can you tell me, are you going to open up with a description of the public access room?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm not really familiar with this particular we use Zoom mostly, so I'm not sure. I got my screen up, so how do I end up sharing it?
You click the share button, but I think Logan's going to help us out and do it for you if you want to just.
Yeah. Can he?
Thanks, Logan.
Thanks, Logan. Let me know when you guys are ready. What was that?
All right. We're all good to go.
Okay.
I misspoke.
We'll see how many consecutive IT issues we can have today. But by saying it, it's unjinxing it. Yeah.
This is also a plastic table too.
Yeah, I didn't say this is the end of it. I got this in case I need to down. All right, we're all good to go.
Okay. Let me just get out of this. Okay. So you're on the first. Are you on the first slide?
We think so.
Is that the green? Is that the one with the public access room with our phone number in the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
you
Logan,
should
I'm going to
put-
ask you to just kind of, if you can go to the next slide after I'm done. But again, my name's Keanu Young. I'm assistant coordinator of the public access room. And we are a legislative resource office at the Capitol that's responsible for helping enhance the public's ability to participate in the legislative process. Next slide. Okay, so we're located in room 401. We're on the Malka Eva side of the building, and we are open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. during session. Right now, we're really busy with getting lots of calls because a lot of people are really confused about the calendar. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the upcoming slides. Next slide. So we're a division of the Legislative Reference Bureau, which is a nonpartisan service agency at the Capitol. We're a nonpartisan agency like the Bureau is. We don't get involved in the politicking or policy side of lawmaking. We're strictly process people. We're taxpayer funded. We have lots and lots of resources that we create in our office. We provide guidance on the process year round pretty much. We do presentations on civics education, on the legislative process, on advocacy. We have workspace. We have public computers. A lot of times we help kupuna who want to testify but don't know how to use the computer. So they come into our office and we help assist them. We can make copies of people's testimonies. People come up to our offices to watch the hearings. If they don't want to be in the conference rooms, which are sometimes crowded during session, we can make copies of people's testimonies, as mentioned before. They can get supplies at our office, and also we have a recharging device. So we're always happy to help. Next slide. So we're one of only 2 full service offices like this in the country where the state has provided citizens further access to government. And the other state that has something like a public access room is the state of Alaska. So the last 2 states in the union provide the most assistance to the citizens in helping them to engage the legislature and getting their voices heard. Next slide. Okay, so every legislative session begins on the 3rd Wednesday in January. This year is January 17th. Most of our calendar year is in the interim period. That's the time in between sessions, usually from the 2nd week of May through the first 2 weeks of January. Then session starts, and the colored wedges on the right side, we put that on to let people know the dates between deadlines. Those are dates between major deadlines on the legislative calendar, and we show that because things move very quickly when we're in session. So the legislature meets for 60 session days, legislative days. Those are just days that the House and Senate are conducting business in chamber. What's not calculated until those 60 days are recess days, weekends, and holidays. And recess days are just days that are usually built around the deadlines. And next slide. Okay, so just as a reminder, from the lawmaking process, this is a brief glimpse of what happens for bills, what has to happen for bills to become law in our state. They have to be introduced by a state legislator, so a senator or representative, during the very first week or 2 weeks at the beginning of session. They have to pass 3 floor votes. They call them readings, but they're actually floor votes in each chamber. They have to pass through every committee that they get referred to, and bills are referred to committees by leadership in the House and Senate based on what they're trying to do. Any committee that has some type of ownership over the bills, what the bill is trying to do or what the bill is saying, will be attached to that referral. Some bills get, 2 referrals, some bills get 3 referrals, other bills get 1 referral. The number of referrals will trigger the deadline that applies to it. So the more referrals of the bill has, the more deadlines it has to meet and the harder it is for those bills to pass. For bills that get through the process in both the House and Senate, they go through 3 readings, 3 floor votes, every committee that they refer to. If the House draft and the Senate draft are different, which is usually the case, they can't send both versions up to the governor, so they have to reconcile those differences in conference committee. Then if they do that, the bill goes to the floor of each chamber one more time, and then sent up to the governor. And then the governor has his own responsibility in either signing the bill into law, vetoing it, or just allowing the law to become, allowing the law to become effective on its effective date. So, next slide. And it's got to get through everything that I talked about by the deadlines that are listed in the legislative calendar. So the legislative calendar is kind of tricky. Even legislative staff sometimes have a hard time understanding it. I've been dealing with the calendar for a long time, so I understand a little bit more than most people. If you guys have questions about the calendar later on, please give us a call and we'll walk you through the steps we're getting of when your bill has to move past a certain deadline. We're getting lots of calls about that right now. So today is the second lateral filing deadline. As you can see, it's there on March 21st. So anytime you see a filing deadline, that's the deadline for committees to report the bills out. And in order for them to report bills out, they would have had to issue a hearing notice, had a hearing on it, and vote to pass it out in some form. And that deadline is the deadline for them to report the committee report out and any amended draft. So, and it's the next to last committee. And if you look on the calendar, the next day, tomorrow is the second lateral, which is the last day for bills to move to their final committee in the non-originating chamber. So right now, it's after crossover. The House is dealing with Senate bills. The Senate is dealing with House bills. So by tomorrow, bills should be in their last committee in the non-originating chamber. So we're kind of really getting the bills that were introduced at the beginning of session. I think it was maybe around 2,800 or so, plus all the bills that were introduced last year that carried over became alive again. A lot of them missed deadlines already. So we're dealing with less bills at this point in session. Next slide. Okay, so this is what it looks visually. People like to look at things visually. I know I do. And so this is a visual of how bills move through the process. It's an idea that gets drafted into a bill and they go through the process in their respective chambers. So House bills go through the process in the House first. Those that survive cross over to the Senate, and it goes through the process in the Senate, and vice versa for Senate bills. They cross over to the House after they finish the process in the Senate. If you're looking at the calendar, we're kind of right there. That's where we are right now. Most bills will go for second reading tomorrow and move on to its final committee. And then we'll be dealing with one more committee hearing. These are usually the last committees, or not usually, these are the last committees in the non-originating chambers. And so you see a lot of finance hearings, a lot of ways and means hearings, a lot of hearings for, judiciary. But by this time, all the subject matter committees are mostly done with their work. So it'll be the big committees that are doing their work. And then for the bills that pass out of those committees, they go on to the decking deadline. That's the next big deadline that applies to it. Next slide. Okay. The legislature's website is a great resource on how to find information. And so we use the reports and list page to access information on the website. The website address is capital.hawaii.gov. And when you go there on the home page, you would click on the laws and research subject heading. And then from the drop-down menu, select reports and lists. Next slide. And then you'd scroll down. This is to see, so tomorrow, after the committee reports are filed tonight, tomorrow when you can scroll down to the second lateral box on the reports and list page, and you can see all the bills that are still alive in the process. just by clicking on the either the House bills or the Senate bills or the all bills, and you can scroll through them to find all the bills that are still alive. And this will apply to also those carryover measures that have made this deadline last year. Next slide. When you select the link, it'll open up a report page, and here you see all the bills. Right now, there's 786. I just captured this today. There'll be a lot more tomorrow after all the committee reports are filed and the bills, move to their final committee in the non-originating chamber. So you can look through the list, and when you identify a bill you want, you just click on not the PDF, but the bill link. Next slide. It'll bring up the bill status page, and the bill status page is where you can access all the information about a bill. You can see its history, the testimony that was provided as the bill moved through the process, the committee reports that were already filed, the different versions of the measure. And here you see the current referral. So when you're looking at a bill status page, the last committees, like in the instance, WAM, those are the committees that will be working on the bills now. It's the last committee in the non-originating chamber. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then the next deadline that will apply to the bills is the second decking deadline. So this is the deadline for all the last committees in the non-originating chamber to report the bill out. So by this point, next on April 5th, the committees would have had to schedule the bill for a hearing, pass it out in some form, and then they report it out. That's the day for them to report the bill out in any amended draft. It's the decking is a constitutionally mandated requirement for legislators to have at least 48 hours to view a bill before they vote on it on third or final reading. And usually the big third reading days for the House and Senate will be the following Tuesday. The recess day on April 8th, as you see here, it's a caucus day. That's when the House and Senate members will get together and figure out which bills they want to have debate on and which bills that they're just okay with moving on without any debate. So that's the next big deadline for those of you that are keeping track of bills that have made it to this point and will make the lateral deadline and will be in their last committee. The last date for those committees to report the bills will be the second decking deadline, and that's on April 5th. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for bills that have disagreement, so by this point, bills that get past all the requirements, going through the three votes in each chamber, going through every committee, the non-originating chamber usually amends the bill somehow, even if it's just affecting the effective date, to force it in a conference. So at this point, all those bills that are voted on, most of them that are voted on that big third reading day will go to conference. And conference is just where the House and Senate appoint members of their chamber to try to work on an agreement between the House draft and the Senate draft, and to come up with one draft that they can both support, which will be a conference draft. And if they are able to do that, well, let me just show you where that is in the calendar. This last.
On that note, I tried to send you a message a little earlier. We were only able to put aside about 12 minutes for this. Is there anything else you wanted to close out on?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to show them that where like this part is, and what's going to happen. Like this is the final part of like the lawmaking process for the legislature, and so this is where all the action is going to happen. So if you guys have any questions, I think I left my trifold at the library, so feel free to email at me any questions that you guys have. And that's it, Ian. After that, I was just going to talk a little bit more about the public access room, but if people have questions about us or about the legislative process, we'll be happy to answer those questions later.
Thank you. Well, let's see if we have any questions. Board members, any questions? You can stop there. No questions from the board members that I can see. Any other questions from any other attendees about the legislative process? We're on the calendar or the public access room. Well, Keanu, thank you so much for making it out here. It's really, we really appreciate you. I just
Yeah,
want to stress
happy to
for
help.
everyone, I just want to stress for everyone here, like the public access room is a enormously helpful space if you want to be able to understand the legislative process, effectuate change, pretty much anything. There's been times where I realized I need to update my testimony during long hearings. I could reprint up there. There was one time at opening day, we had one typo on some papers. We were able to get that one done. It's a great meeting spot. It's a great place to educate. They come to events like these. So Keanu, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I really want people, next time you go to the Capitol, go up and say hi. What's the room number again?
401.
401. Great.
And what are your hours?
Okay, what are your hours?
Right now we're open from 8 to 5, and during the interim we're open from 8 to 4:30. So just half an hour earlier.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about where we're at in the legislative process, how people can get involved. Next up, we have a presentation from member Thomas Baldwin talking about some legislative priorities and the context of how our board might be able to express those and previously express legislative priorities. Please take it away, Thomas. Can you change what's on the screen?
Sure, that's Monday through Friday, right?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody know what that is?
Aloha, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, but we can't see the screen just yet.
That's interesting. So I have, it says
No,
I'm
no,
sharing.
give me 1 second, Thomas. It's on my side.
Okay.
My screen is duplicated.
Take your
right
time.
now.
Take your time. Yeah.
Okay, Thomas, you're all good.
Great. So everyone can hear me. Everyone can see my screen. I'll get started then. Aloha, everybody, board members, members from the legislature, and of course, community members. My name is Thomas Baldwin. I'm a member of this neighborhood board, and I'll be providing a presentation on our legislative priorities for tonight. So as we plan to have a robust discussion with our legislators, I was asked sort of to ground this discussion and discuss our priorities. Just a little background on myself. I've worked at the Hawaii State Legislature for a session for Representative Cedric Gates. This was in 2016 as a committee clerk. So in my capacity, one of my responsibilities involved ensuring that testimony for bills was available for both legislators and the general public. Afterwards, I worked a cumulative 4 years at the Neighborhood Commission Office and served many boards like this one. So without further ado, kind of want to signpost our discussion for tonight. So first, I'll be discussing our own priorities, moving then on to the priorities that were outlined by our leadership, both in the legislature and in the executive branch as well. Then discuss a few bills that were on my radar that seemed to align with our priorities, and discuss how we as a board can further collaborate with our legislators. So to better understand our board's legislative priorities, this board actually did a lot of that work for me in the past. So between 2018 and 2022, our board regularly formed permitted interaction groups, or PIGs, to poll our board members on their top legislative priorities. So I looked at the most recent questionnaire that we did in 2022, and it divided our concerns into 3 broad categories. For 2022, that was COVID-19 response, taxes, fees, and credits, and then another section called Other State and Local Issues. So since our 2022 priorities were heavily focused on COVID-19 due to the peak of the pandemic at that time, I did choose to look at the other key issues that were outlined by our board. So hopefully we can evaluate how well those other longstanding community concerns have been addressed through recent legislative action. So I paid particular attention, like I said, to these other state and local issues. And I identified what I thought were the top issues based on this chart here. So the top 2 listed here, as you can see on the chart to the right, were decreasing the cost of living and diversifying the economy, which are very laudable policy goals. But because these weren't exactly policies in and of themselves, I didn't include them in the top 5 that I thought were most critical from this chart. So some of you may notice as well, I didn't include the minimum wage increase on this chart, and that's because our former Senator Taniguchi helped pass the increase to the minimum wage between 2022 and now. So thank you again, Senator, if you happen to be here, if someone could pass the message along. So from there, that leaves us with 5 issues that are a priority for this board: expanding homelessness services, expand affordable housing, expand senior caregiver support, increase funding for public education, and mandate paid family leave. This isn't necessarily to say the other issues aren't also very important, but just for the sake of this discussion, I wanted to key those out. So now we go to the legislative session for this year, and the first place I looked was our state website. As Keanu mentioned, we can go to reports and lists. Another very useful portion of that website is measures by package. So very briefly, a legislative package is how organizations, whether that be the governor's office, a particular caucus, say the Kapuna caucus, or the county mayors, this is how these organizations define those priorities that capture their vision and goals for the state that year. So in this case, I looked at the legislative packages for the governor's office and the House Majority Caucus. In the case of the Senate majority package, that was unfortunately absent from this list, so I had to rely on press releases to fill in the gaps there. So from this, we find that our leaders in government have prioritized relief for those affected by the devastating wildfires in Lahaina and more broadly in Maui and Hawaii. And of course, wildfire mitigation and emergency preparedness to make sure a disaster on that level can never happen again. We also see the legislature moving to address the waiting list of over 28,000 Native Hawaiian beneficiaries that are still on that list. More broadly, moving to housing, we see the legislature still supporting affordable housing for low to moderate income families. And the related issue to that, we see the legislature moving to further address homelessness. Another issue that comes up in a lot of these priorities for our leaders in the legislature is improvement to our workforce development. And part and parcel with that, addressing the vacancies that we have in our state agencies. There are many, many vacancies in our agencies, and not just now, but looming in the future as many of our public employees retire. One that isn't mentioned in this slide as well is healthcare as another significant issue. So just to more briefly discuss where our issues sort of align, we saw that the governor's package did include a measure that would have expanded services to certain homeless youth. That unfortunately was deferred. Related to housing, the House Majority Package includes a bill to provide loans or grants for mixed income rental projects and units in mixed income rental projects for individuals and families. Regarding senior and caregiver support, there was also a bill related, there is still a bill related to missing persons. We can call this the Silver Alert Bill, which would establish an alert program modeled after the Amber Alert program. So if someone in a vulnerable demographic, say they be Kapuna or those with developmental disabilities or persons with cognitive impairments, is reported missing, you would receive a notification on your phone, much like an Amber Alert. I don't have too much time, but we do see a lot of funding for public education, especially as it ties into healthcare education. So we should keep an eye out for that. Another bill related to family leave is referred to the CPC committee. We'll find out tonight if it's going to be scheduled for that hearing, but it would establish a family and medical leave insurance program. So hopefully we can get an update on that. Another bill that stood out to me was one that would involve the creation of a crisis intervention pilot program. And I'm hoping that our representative and chair of the Health and Homelessness Committee, Representative Bellotti, can hopefully speak to that more. So regarding how we can collaborate in the future, our board has already passed resolutions in the past related to legislative concerns. The most recent one was on condominiums. The one thing I would recommend is that we maybe talk about those issues in the summer and the fall in order to line that up with the legislators when they're actually drafting these bills before they're introduced at the beginning of the session. Beyond that, we can form PIGs again. If any of you thought that maybe these priorities maybe didn't match up with how they ought to be, we should form another PIG and make another questionnaire for board members and community members. Beyond that, we can form standing committees on legislation in order to have more frequent discussions on the legislature, excuse me. So thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions for our legislators tonight, that QR code will link you to a website where you can submit a question for our legislators, and that'll be up for a little bit. And I will also be posting links in the chat. So thank you very much for your time. I'm a little over, but hopefully that wasn't too much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Thomas at this time from board members? A second. Questions from board members? Please go ahead, Richard.
I don't know if this is the right place, but I was asked by someone who lives in this area. Two questions. Can a 14-year-old get an abortion without their parental?
We'll take that. So that's a question for our legislators, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I should clarify.
Process. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I should clarify the questions for our legislatures. That would be through the QR code. Obviously, as being a board member, you can freely ask here. This QR code is for later in the agenda.
Okay. Any questions from members of the audience? Can you state your name and please ask your question?
Yes, my name is Ma'azam, correct?
Thomas, can you hear him clearly?
Ma'aza, my name is Ma'aza Makrea. I live in 1420 Victoria Street. And I'm wondering, actually, those people who live in a condominium, 58% of their cost is due to regulation.
Is this question related to how the board interacts with legislation? Or
Yes,
this
this is relating to the legislative priorities is the costs. People who we are talking about.
So you're welcome to
we are going to become homeless if these regulations continue.
So your point is very well taken.
Yes.
We're going to be able to have a lot of room to discuss that. This part is purely on how we can best interact with legislators. We're going to give you an opportunity to ask that exact question to legislators in a bit, and I think it's best to hold that.
Thank you, sir.
And you'll be at the top of the list to ask your first question.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Do we have questions specifically on how the board might consider vocalizing and bringing up policies to our legislators in the future? Seeing none of those, Thomas, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very appreciated.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you, Board.
Okay, so we're now going to open up to state elected official reports. So at this point, we're going to hear from all legislators about their priorities and what they're working on, what they're concerned about, bills they want to bring up for us. We're going to hear from all of our area legislators first. Then we're going to cycle back to Q&A, and then we're also going to afterwards hear from Governor Josh Green's representative. So to start us off, Senator Fukunaga, could you please join us up front? I want to also commend the senator for very thoroughly providing analysis of several area of concern bills that for us. This is very helpful.
Where's the microphone?
A microphone's right here.
Yes, Senator, so you can just project your voice.
Okay, I think I'm going to sit down then.
Yes, please.
In that case. Thank you so much, Neighborhood Board. It's really great to see people in person for the first time in many, many months. What I did earlier is I sent to the Neighborhood Board assistant some of our third reading decisions that we have made at the first crossover, and talking about some of the more controversial decisions we had in the state Senate recently, one of which was the chair of the UH Board of Regents. Some of the other nominees that we had were also very quite colorful. So I would say that in this instance, we had a very interesting set of discussions between the senators as well as the nominees. And in a way, I'm sorry that, the Senate did not confirm the designee for the UH Board of Regents, because I think this is a very challenging time for the University of Hawaii. However, I think we learned that, we have to really safeguard our university systems right to autonomy if we really want to move forward and allow them to expand and grow the economy, because that is one of the things that was really top of mind during the 2000 adoption of the constitutional amendment, which gave the university autonomy in all of their internal affairs and only in areas of statewide concern did the legislature exert, direction. What I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight is condominiums, financing, and insurance issues, because for most of us here in Makiki, almost everyone lives in high rises, and we have been through some really, really challenging times. I want to just get a quick sampling from the members. How many of you are homeowners? Okay, how many of you are renters? Okay, in our high-rise condominiums, we're sort of in a very unique situation because after the Marco Polo fire, one of the things that happened was the city council adopted legislation mandating that older condominium properties built before 1975 that were 10 stories and higher and did not have exterior hallways had to install fire sprinklers in individual units and in common areas, or condo associations could opt out if they underwent what we call a life safety evaluation process. And so for most of the buildings that are required to undergo this process, of the 300 or so buildings, 280 buildings have been sort of stuck in this limbo of not being able to pass their life safety evaluation. So this has been for 2 years. We gave people a deadline. They had to complete this process in August 2022. And we have since that time been hunting for ways to make it easier for both condo associations and owners to be able to afford our safety upgrades if they choose to do things like fire alarm upgrades or elevator, electrical system upgrades, improving access to the stairwells so that people can exit quickly, etc. Unfortunately, the big problem that we have seen is that for the life safety evaluation process, there's a particular criteria that is really a cause for concern for most condo owners, and that is the fact that the way that buildings were built in the past, before 1975, you usually had what is kind of commonly known as vertical openings between floors. So for your plumbing system, whether it's in the kitchens or in the bathrooms, there's basically a giant shaft. And what they have subsequently determined was that's a very dangerous kind of feature to have if you're in a building where a fire has started, because the fire can spread that much more rapidly. So as we have been looking for ways to address this issue, part of what we focused on last year was making sure that everybody who is covered by that fire sprinkler ordinance law could also access a longer time to finance repairs and maintenance upgrades. So that was something where we said, okay, that's the first step. This year, what we're doing is we're tackling types of financing that may be available for condo associations. There's two that we're looking at this year. One is called CPACER financing. It's a form of commercial property assessed financing that usually provides cheaper costs or cheaper rates, partly because there's a lien on the property, the entire property, and the obligation becomes one that is attached to the condo association. Of course, the individual condo owners have to pay their allocation for whatever improvements are made. But this usually means that if your building also needs to make major repairs like plumbing systems, things, if you ultimately decided to do something like fire sprinkler installation, this would give you access to a much cheaper form of financing. A second proposal that we are working on very closely this year is opening up what they call appraisal management company financing, which is a broader group of companies throughout the United States, which also augment the kinds of financing that we can get in state. Now, fast forward to today, what we are finding is that as many of the insurance providers began seeing the impacts of many of the disasters that occurred last year, including on Maui, the wildfire experience, a lot of the insurance claims and, increased costs have now reached a point where hurricane insurance coverage is skyrocketing. And for those condo properties that have not yet passed their life safety evaluation, your premiums have been skyrocketing. You may not necessarily see it directly if it's part of your mortgage or underlying financing, but this is one of the things that condo boards have really been struggling with, especially over this last period. And so the thing that I wanted to share with you tonight is, as we move forward in this process, one area that has been kind of a source of some concern is that, after some of the news coverage last year in Civil Beat at the White Business magazines, a lot of the statistics that were being provided by the fire department and the fire council were very broad. They covered the entire state. But in the survey that was conducted by, I guess, the Global Collaborative, part of what the survey picked up was information that is very inaccurate and misleading with respect to condo properties that are covered by the fire safety ordinance, because a lot of the statistics and information that were quoted by the fire council apply broadly across the state. This set of information does not apply primarily to the kinds of condos that are subject to this automatic fire sprinkler ordinance. And so it is causing even more concern within the insurance industry. And so part of the thing that we're working on now is one bill, the company stabilization bill, in which, although, there's been working groups involving the insurance industry, lenders, mortgage bankers, and condo management companies have been working over the past year. I think a lot of the focus has been on getting condo managers and properties to shape up. I think the perspective is that people have not been working and moving fast enough. And so part of what the property stabilization bills are focusing on is to say, okay, condos, if you want to have any kind of insurance, you are really going to have to clean up your act. And we're going to push you into complying with upgrades to your buildings. And we want to see a plan, and we are going to enforce it, and we are going to push you to the point where we believe that you can become insurable. And that's one area that I'm particularly concerned about, because I think a lot of the condo associations have been working hard, to meet the requirements of the fire sprinkler ordinance. But with a lot of the conditions for safety improvements, repair and maintenance, plumbing system upgrades, oftentimes beyond your control, where either costs have increased exponentially, it's a lot harder to get contractors. It's extremely difficult for people who may be living on fixed incomes. Many of the directions that our property insurance is going in would actually put a lot of our residents, renters and homeowners at risk. So that was one of the things I wanted to sort of throw out to you tonight. And during the question and answer period, I'll be happy to, take your questions and, seek your feedback, because I am worried that in our neighborhood, almost all of the residential properties are made up of high-rise condos. So, we wouldn't want to lose any of the residents, nor would we want to lose.
Senator, we're about 10 minutes. Would you mind giving a final summarizing remarks?
Sorry, I got carried away there, Keith. I also have for discussion later on, kind of a handout that talks about some other projects that are being proposed for the neighborhood. And so I'm happy to take questions on those in the Q&A portion. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate being here.
Thank you very much, Senator, for the robust report and the legislative priorities and concerns. Representative Della Alvalade, were we able to correct for the sound issue?
Yes, I think I was able to.
That's good. All right, it's great to hear you. All right, please take it away whenever you're ready.
First, I want to thank Thomas and Keanu. I caught little bits and pieces as I was able to weave in and out of the conversation. I'll focus my comments and I won't take up the full 10 minutes so that we can really focus in on questions from the community. But my kuleana, my responsibility is health and homelessness. And I will say that there has absolutely been a focus on continuing to address homelessness. The governor, the Senate, and the House are moving companion bills, or introduced, and then we are moving companion bills. Importantly is the crisis intervention pilot program that Thomas mentioned. So about 2 weeks ago, the city and county of Honolulu opened up their first behavioral health crisis center in Iwalei. This was a project that actually came out of many conversations that we've had over the last couple of years since 2019. And we were having conversations with this in earnest at the end of session. So even though we had left some of the policy statutory bills on the table at the end of session last year, the governor moved forward with continuing to work on opening up a behavioral health crisis center. And the concept for that is supposed to be a no wrong door approach to individuals who are going and experiencing some kind of crisis, but not necessarily having an acute emergency medical condition. So think about those folks that you see that you often want to call because you might be hearing them screaming in the middle of the night, or you're seeing them, running around the street or under a bridge, and we call the police officers to get some help for those individuals and to get some relief, frankly, for the community. Well, they've opened up one of these sites. One of the things we're continuing to work through is going to be continued funding for these behavioral health crisis centers, and also continued policy to ensure that the people who are referred to them can get the care that they want, and that they are moving through a system, whether it's through the ER or through these crisis centers, that the people who are taking them to these areas, mostly going to be law enforcement and our first responders, are trained. So we are still working on that project. It comes from a model from Arizona, where we see crisis intervention officers and this kind of diversion from the emergency room and from the pre-booking jail process. So that is one area we're working on. We again also have to fund this. The governor opened up this center using ARPA funds. So we are looking to secure funding for it moving into the next fiscal year. Other bills that we're moving and looking at are increases to the Homeless Programs Office. This is the line item in the budget that funds all of those. Think about all of the coordinators, outreach workers who we send to help law enforcement when they clear out encampments. Those are the homeless service providers who are community service providers that we pay for through state contracts. This line item has not been increased for over a decade. So if you think about all the cost that we've seen increase, these are the individuals like IHS when we call them to send out a caseworker or outreach worker, or H3RC, or any of those kinds of community groups, that we send out to address homelessness issues and help with supportive housing or transitional care. We are hoping to fund this by a mere increase, hopefully between an additional $1 to $5 million. We have this item moving both in a bill. It was identified as a majority caucus priority bill in House Bill 1834, and it was also put into the governor's budget. The governor allotted about approximately $1 million, which represents a 5% increase. $5 million would represent about a 20% increase to that budget line item. What happened in the House Draft 1 of the budget, which is House Bill 1800, a placeholder of $1 was placed into that. So we are watching that. There's other elements of funding for homelessness and supportive housing and affordable housing. If you think about homelessness and affordable housing as on a continuum, there's a lot of conversation about funding that whole continuum. Finally, and I'll just end, in addition to all the work that we're trying to do around mental health, we also are looking at workforce issues. So we have pushed bills such as the Nurse Licensing Compact, which hopefully will speed up the licensure of nurses. We know that lots of nurses, Hawaii is only one of, I think, fewer than I think there's about 40 states that are already part of the nurse licensure compact. So we really want to ensure that folks who have like a nurse's license can get more quickly licensed in this state. And that's going to be one way to do that. Another area that we're looking at, provisional licensing. Again, this is another majority package bill, is provisional licensure for marriage and family therapists, associate mental health counselors, and associate psychologists. Again, this is a way to kind of speed up the licensure process, because we know that that's a barrier for workforce entering. I'll leave it at that, Chair, but I'm happy to answer any other questions, both in this area of health and homelessness, as well as other areas in the legislature.
Thank you very much, Representative, for really digging into some of the top priorities related to health and homelessness. We're going to save the Q&A for the group Q&A a bit later. I don't believe Representative Scott Nishimoto or Taylor Date are available. I know I got an email that there was some competing calendar concerns for him, but if the representative's here, please speak up. Okay, well, hearing, please let me know, Logan, if he joins us later. But then I'm going to welcome Representative Andrew Garrett, House District 22. It's great to see you in person here. Thanks for making the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here today. It's great to be here in person. I try to log out as much as I can via WebEx, but it's nothing like being here in person. So I don't intend to use my full 10 minutes as well, because I think our time is better spent hearing your questions and engaging on the issues that are important to you. But I just want to cover a few things. And my newsletter is being circulated. This will go out to the district hopefully in the next week or so. There's kind of a backlog with the print shop at the Capitol. But just to orient everyone, District 22 is primarily Manoa Valley, but it does also include Tantalus. So basically the Makiki Street portion that kind of goes up Round Top, up to the top, about the 4,000 block of Round Top Drive, around Forest Ridge Way. I have that up to that portion, and then Representative Bellotti has the portion going down, so Tantalus and Makiki Heights Road. Just wanted you to be aware of that. I know this is the Makiki Tantalus Lower Punchbowl neighborhood board. So as you see in my newsletter there, I just had some bills that I wanted to highlight. I do serve on the House Finance Committee, so I wanted to just bring your attention to the budget that Representative Bellotti mentioned. That's House Bill 1800. The top priority for us at the legislature really is continuing to support the survivors of the Maui wildfires. The challenge we have, though, is the cost of housing the survivors is essentially spiraled out of control. Not sure how closely you've been following the state obligations for that, but we're looking at roughly $1 billion at this point. We want to do our part to support them as much as we can. My stance has been that, considering this fiscal crisis that we're in, we need to put all projects on the table, that there can't be any sacred cows. So we need to look at all the projects we've appropriated in the past. I've been in the press recently over my stance that, maybe we ought to pause the new Aloha Stadium project. Right now, that has about $400 million of appropriations. My bill would essentially pause that, redirect some of the money to the university to make Ching Field permanent, and the remainder of that balance to support the Maui wildfires. We didn't touch on some social issues, but one of the things that's kind of taking up a lot of attention is this push from the cannabis industry, trying to legalize marijuana. I've been very consistent in my stance in opposition to that. I don't think it makes sense for public health reasons. The law enforcement community is unified in their opposition to it. I think it's pretty telling that the Attorney General, who is the chief law enforcement officer for the state, is personally opposed to it, but the governor is in favor of it. So she did try to craft what she calls a bill capturing best practices as much as possible. The bill did pass the Senate 19-6. We had a very contentious debate on the House floor on second reading, which is fairly unusual. It was a 24-22 vote in favor. But since then, there was a hearing on Tuesday, and we may have one more hearing in the House Finance Committee on that. So we'll see what happens. But again, I've been very consistent in my stance opposing that measure. Another bill that's a bit of concern is House Bill 1630 and Senate Bill 3202. This is relating to urban development. This is being pushed by affordable housing advocates, and we all recognize that affordable housing is one of the major issues we need to address. We're all concerned about out-migration that's happening. One of the reasons I personally ran for office is I'm concerned about my daughters and their generation, how they're going to be able to afford to stay in Hawaii, considering just the cost of living and home ownership being so elusive. But what this bill does is basically prohibit the county from prohibiting less than 3 dwelling units per lot. So it's basically trying to add density to the urban corridor. So, I represent Monroe Valley. It's an established neighborhood. I think the urban Honolulu contingent has been pretty consistent in its opposition to this, primarily concerned about infrastructure impacts. We know the challenges with the sewer. We hear about, residents trying to add just a single dwelling unit being denied for sewer capacity issues. We know parking is a challenge with, narrow streets and whatnot. So there is a vehicle still moving. We're trying to educate our colleagues about some of the ramifications on established neighborhoods. I know Councilmember Say is here. The City Council had a hearing on this as well. They're chiming in as well, expressing their concerns about this. So I'll let him explain where they're coming from. But I just wanted to highlight those 2 bills in addition to the budget. So I think I'll just stop there and just yield my time to the group for questions for that segment. So thank you for your time. Great to be here.
Thank you very much, Representative. Very much appreciate that. All right. So that concludes for House Representatives and Senators. In speaking with Governor Josh Green's Representative Russell Payne, we decided it would be best to include him now in this section as well, so he can join the Q&A that we're about to have. So we'll go from Russell first, and then we'll transition into the Q&A. Is Russell?
I am here. Sorry about that.
Great.
Hi, good evening. Everybody hear me? Am I good?
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thanks for including me and the governor's office in this important discussion. Let me start off by putting this into the chat room.
Well, you're doing that. I'll just remind people that we do have the Q&A questions. So Thomas, if you could share the link again in preparation for the Q&A, that'll be helpful. Sorry for the interruption.
Hey, Russell, I think you might have muted yourself on accident.
Thank you. Okay. So what I just threw into the chat room is a link to the governor's policy report, and he's calling it the Hawaii We Deserve policy report. And the office released it last week. It's a 2-part policy report that builds on Governor Green's annual State of the State address that he delivered to the legislature back in January. So the first part tackles some of the pressing issues facing the state, and Thomas covered some of those, as well as some of our representatives, and Senator Fukunaga went over some of those, battling the high cost of living, housing, diversifying our economy, homelessness. You'll see in that report, a lot of those issues are covered, and the governor proposes various legislative bills to address those issues, as well as working, just simple, pure governance, doing the job that he was elected to do, and working with all the departments and other stakeholders to find solutions to those pressing issues. So let me talk about a couple of them. The first is combating the high cost of living, which is definitely a priority for all of us. It builds on the governor's Green Affordability Plan, or GAP, that was passed last year. So he's calling it GAP 2 this year, and there's a bill attached to it, HB 2404. And essentially what this does is it addresses taxes, which is something that we all want to lessen for all of us. So the HB 2404 essentially proposes tax breaks for the working class, and especially those ALICE households, that's asset limited, income constrained, employed households, those who have good jobs, but just because of the continuing rising cost of living cannot seem to make it. So HB 2404 addresses that by what it would do would recompute some of the tax brackets, including the standard deduction, itemized deduction, income tax brackets, and personal exemptions each year. And it would build in a cost of living adjustment factor. kind of a one-time adjustment to the tax brackets that would help our residents, our taxpayers, deal with the rising costs of living. Hopefully put some additional funds back into their pockets so that they can pay the bills that they need to in order to survive. There's also a proposal in that bill to increase the tax credit for child and dependent care. It would increase the tax credit from 15 to the current 15% to 50% of eligible child and dependent care expenses, up to, I believe it's $7,000. So that's one of the bills that the governor is high on his priority list this year. Regarding housing, definitely building more housing, as Thomas pointed out earlier. Affordable housing is a top priority for the governor. Within this policy plan that I provided you, the governor outlines a plan to construct more than 10,000 additional units, and that's public housing units, across 9 public housing properties across our state. Essentially taking the existing low-density public housing properties and converting them into modern, mixed-income, transit-oriented communities to increase the affordable housing inventory for our residents. Let's see here. There is another bill that's attached to that to help push along the affordable housing plan, and that's SB 3120. And essentially that would create a housing policy and program coordinator position to help navigate all the red tape and bring all of the stakeholders together. That bill is moving along. It passed the House Housing Committee earlier this week and is now, I believe, before the House Finance Committee. So that's moving along. Let's see. The other area that governors definitely focus on is addressing homelessness. We know that it's a top priority, or one of the top priorities for the Makiki area. And you folks are familiar with the Kauhale villages. I know we talked about that a couple of meetings ago. So the governor's administration has opened so far 3 Kauhale villages, 2 within the past month, 1 in Kaneohe and 1 in Kalihi in the Middle Street area. The plan is to open 12 additional Kauhale by the end of this year, and 20 by the end of next year, 2025. So we want to definitely work with the neighborhood board on addressing homeless issues. I know earlier this year there was a request to meet with the governor's new homeless coordinator, John Mizuno, and that is still in the works. I'm trying to coordinate with Chair Ross to get both John Mizuno as well as the city's homeless coordinator, Sam Moku, to either attend a meeting or tour the neighborhood to take a look at some of the problem areas where the homeless encampments are. The second part of the governor's plan focuses on Maui long-term recovery. I won't go into details of that. You can read that through the link that I provided you. It's a kind of a lengthy report, but it's an easy read and it's very interesting, very informative. I went through it today. Yeah, it's pretty quick. So if you have the time, please take a look at that. If you want a hard copy, I'd be happy to get one to you. Just ping me and I will definitely get it to you somehow. I think at this point, I will yield my time and we can focus on Q&A.
Great, thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. All right, if we able to pin, both Russell Ping and Representative Bellotti both on the screen there and try to make it about equal, yeah, perfect, that's perfect. All right, so we're gonna go into some Q&A. We're gonna start off with board members and then we're gonna move to members of the public. So starting us off with that, are there any questions from, board members?
Chair Ross.
Yes, Thomas?
So the first question I have from these responses is from board member Hugh Kojima.
Okay, we're gonna take, because we wanted to get people doing the online questions, so let's go ahead and take that one. And then I see Chuck is the first hand up. Go ahead.
So the question is directed to Representative Bellotti from, again, member Kojima. The question is, are there any legislative measures under consideration that addresses the problem of houseless people living in cars and parking on the street?
Yes, actually, we just heard a resolution, although I think it may have been deferred. There was a resolution from Representative Keela from the Leeward Coast that was urging a safe parking pilot program for the city and county of Honolulu. I think that has been tried in other counties. And so there has been interest by legislators to see if the city and county of Honolulu would do that program here. It is a measure that I believe the Youth Commission has taken up and has asked for us to look into and urged the city and county to look into. I will say that I think that one, no testimony was submitted. And then we got a letter subsequent to the hearing today. But separate and apart from that, I think that there has been some resistance in the city and county of Honolulu just because of the fear of kind of the problems that can occur when properties become allowed for that kind of safe parking program. Concerns about liability, security, and those types of things. But it is certainly an idea that has been floated. And I think if folks here are interested, it is something that we could continue to push. But I do, I caution because I think there is some resistance, just individuals afraid of like what happens when you can kind of congregate those kinds of, that kind of parking activity. But we of course know that homeless people are parking their cars and just essentially, sleeping on the streets where they can find parking. So it is a problem that has been on the radar screen of legislators. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much. We're gonna take a question from Chuck.
Yes, this is for Senator Fukunaga. Senator, the condos all pretty much have to have reserve studies done, and there's different companies that are doing that. So my question to you is, do these various reserve study companies, are they required to go to any classes or get any information like how you guys are updating us and stuff? Because once they make the reserve study, that involves a lot of money. And if they're off on certain things, whether it be timeline or infrastructure items or whatever it is, it's going to really affect the monies for the condos.
I think that was what the 2022 legislation was intended to address. There have been a number of complaints about condominium boards and associations where there have been abuses where, board members may favor a particular company or individual. And so in the 2022 legislation, part of the requirement was that you had an independent company performing the reserve studies. So I think what each condo association has to do is really work with your management company to vet potential
reserve
study procurers so that you get a very reliable and trustworthy, individual that you can be working with.
Yes.
Sorry, Chuck, we're gonna hold the follow-ups on that one. Thank you. For statements, feel free, but if we come back around, you can ask a second question. Do you have any questions from anyone attending online at this time? Any board members, I should say? Hearing none, we'll move on to Richard.
Senator, cost of living in our condo association fees is more than triple since 2019. And we've heard from the company that assists us that it's going to go even higher. And not the only reason, but one of the reasons is mandated reserve fund. And we're being told that it's going to increase. The state law has mandated that we have all these line items. We already have more than 10% delinquency of our owners in our condo. Because they just can't afford to pay what it is now, and now we know it's going to go even higher. So, yeah, it's a real issue. I'm going to be 74 this year. I extended my business for another year, among other reasons, so we can.
I'm sorry, can you close down on a question?
Okay, so the question is, yeah, we need help. These state laws, I know were probably done with the best interest in mind, but it's had a tremendous negative effect. And we're talking about affordability, where it's going to impact that. You're going to have more people not able to live here. So, yes.
We absolutely hear you. And so the reason I wanted to share, that particular survey with the board members and attendees tonight was just to show how much erroneous information is sort of being circulated about condo properties. And I think your example and the example of others who are trying to comply can go a long way in helping us relieve some of those pressures. We're working at the state level, but I think when people at insurance division and within DCCA see how much suffering is going on, that will help us convince the city that they have to sort of accommodate, some of the resident needs and make their criteria more manageable to overcome. Because our main objective is safety, getting in and out of a building if you need to evacuate. It's not to, bankrupt residents. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Being mindful that we had some folks waiting, I'm going to take out of order a question from the public. The gentleman in the back, I believe you are 1420. Would you like to phrase your question and let us know if there's a specific member you'd like to ask?
Well, of course, Representative Spalati and Senator Fukunaga. I mean, is the answer more regulation to the problem, or people's responsibility? What's happening is they say this is on the public newspaper. 58% of the cost of a condo on this island is regulation. So by adding more regulation, you're just saying you don't want to bankrupt, but you are adding more regulation. Does that make any sense? Is that a way of relieving your responsibility of actually doing doing away with regulation, because that's what is one of the main drivers, regardless.
Okay, so we'll take that away, and if you have a follow-up, we'll come back to you.
Okay.
That's how we'll handle that. So I want to try to deepen the number of voices in on this one. So let's start off with Representative Bloody. Would you like to try to talk a bit about housing regulation and cost, or should we take that to the governor's office? You're on mute, sorry.
I don't understand the full question, so maybe I would defer to the governor's office on that one.
Yeah, so let's see if Russell Payne will be able to do it. So what we're hearing is there was a recent study by the University of Hawaii Manoa that found about 58% of condo costs are due to regulation. There's a number of definitions of how we do it. They also concluded that this is the highest ratio that any state in the United States has. Would you mind talking a little bit about how the governor agreed views the executive's role in regulation, how this fits into housing packages overall?
Yes, that study is actually something that the governor cited as well. When he introduced his policy report, he did point out that 58% of the cost of building housing, and it's not just condos, but it's all housing throughout the state, is red tape and regulation. So that is one thing that he is trying to address. Not necessarily through legislation, although there might be a bill, and I'm not familiar right now, but through various administrative actions and as well as executive orders, doing what he can to address some of the red tape without having to go through legislation. Of course, when it's required, definitely he will be introducing that type of legislation. But there's also the effort to address the red tape and reduce the red tape through administrative actions, through the governor's executive authority. Does that help address some of that? But definitely,
please.
it's on his radar. It is definitely on his radar. That 58% of red tape, it definitely catches attention.
I think,
So thank you very much for that, Russell. You were also named Senator Fukunaga. Did you want to add anything to that?
I think there needs to be a balance within every community. You know, the whole notion of regulation is to ensure that we have the right mix of affordable housing in each neighborhood and that we balance the density of all of the housing with the capacity of that neighborhood to support it. And so, you know, some of the bills which were proposed to allow for multiple structures on a single lot raised a lot of concerns in older communities which do not have adequate roadway or school water and other kinds of infrastructure to support exponential growth and density. So I think it's a balancing act. We have to do what is appropriate for our neighborhood.
Thank you both very much for that answer. I can give you 30 more seconds if you had any clarification or anything you wanted to add.
I suppose, I think, well, what I want to can I raise a different legislative?
We'll come back around, so you can go back into the.
All right, well, I know, I hope,
Thank you very much.
I hope, I know that there is the regulations should not be based on punitive on people who are already living in the house. We don't want to talk about homelessness when you are actually bankrupting. I mean, you know, I live in Richard's building. Okay, and as I said, my fees have tripled, and hey, I'm.
So we're going to go to the next question. Your comments are well taken. Thank you very much. Did you have a question?
I do.
Please go ahead.
Okay, let me get it all together then. For the House, Senate, the city council hasn't had a chance to get in, and the governor. How are we gonna pay for all this? You know, we had all these things, more here, more here, more here. It's more than total of one. How do we get it down to what's more important? Anyway.
Thank you very much. Do any of our members here this evening, I was trying to look up your bios real quick, serve on the finance committee? Okay, would you like to take that one, Representative Jarrett?
Well, I think that's the challenge. There was some focus recently about the rainy day fund that we have. It does have a surplus of about 1.5 billion. But the money chairs are really concerned about tapping into it because that high reserve allows us to draw favorable interest rates, and it looks really good for the bond rating agencies. So we think we can avoid having to tap that fund, just basically because we've had like pretty healthy carryover balances, surpluses from year to year. But it's a great question. I mean, the whole budget process is about how do you balance this kind of competing interests. And right now we're trying to focus on Maui. I think you folks know that it's, FEMA has been a great partner in all this. But the challenge for us at the state level is that it's based on a reimbursement model, and they're not the quickest payers, right? And unfortunately, we're the ones who signed the contract with the American Red Cross for $500 million. I learned recently that typically FEMA is the one who inks it, but I think because of the urgency in getting our survivors housed, the state chose to sign that contract, which makes us obligated. Again, it's $500 million that we're obligated to pay up front, but hopefully FEMA will reimburse us 90% and $450 million at some point. But it takes a long time. We've heard that for the lava flow issues on the Big Island back in, I think it was 2018, 2019, we're still receiving payments from that. We heard from Calvert Young at UH that the Manoa flood from 2004, they got their last payment recently for the damage to Hamilton Library, 20 years later. So, it's a great question you asked, Mr. Steelquist, because there's so many different interests, competing interests, and that's the challenge in how we fund all these various things.
Thank you very much, Representative. Member Salazar.
I'm just wondering.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I did not mean that. I'm so sorry. Well, I'm gonna let you go first. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay, so this is,
I got mixed up on the name tag. I'm so sorry.
I knew this.
The newest member, I'm so sorry.
This is, for Representative Belatti and, Garrett. It's a safety concern I want to raise about the vegetation management up on Tantalus Round Top Drive. Currently, the guinea grass as well as other trees are encroaching so far onto the road that it's forcing it to be a one-lane road. And there's certain sections in that road where you're coming around a corner and you can't see anything, as well as the cyclists and everything that frequent that roads and go around there. And I think we had 200 odd, cars that go through daily. So it is a very well-used area, whether it's residents, tourists, or whatever else. So I just wanted to know, is there any anything on the radar or any actions that can be taken to address the vegetation through there?
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, we have been contacting both the governor's office as well as the mayor's office to really cut back the overgrowth. You know, initially when we had the fire, that wildfire, and I guess we said, okay, can we all get together and let's, you know, pool our resources and take care of this problem as quickly as we can. We have gotten a little bit of pushback from the state end. However, the State Department of Transportation has offered to work with whomever is able to move forward. We have also been looking at putting in additional funds for Department of Land and Natural Resources. They are ultimately responsible for all of the events about the roadway. And so we're sort of saying, okay, city and state, can we get you together? If we need to provide funds to the city to actually clear the roadway, if we give that money to Department of Transportation, let's get it done before anybody gets hurt.
Thank you, Member Granger, for that question. Member Salsa?
It's to go with Sam's statement about Talus as well on Round Top Drive. Speaking with Lieutenant Scuccio recently, you know, one way we can help this whole overall process for HPD on the area is upgrading the signage. There's a lot of, you know, signage that is missing, is gone, or vandalized, especially at the lookout. You know, there is rules on when the lookout is closed, anything after 10 p.m., but all that signage is gone. So if anyone were to be caught by HPD, and, you know, they get issued a ticket, they can actually have that ticket nullified, I guess, because there is no signage up there currently. There's supposed to be, but anyways, so striping, roadway striping and signage, just to increase the safety and the rules of the area.
Okay, we'll connect with you offline and get some more photos that hopefully get this done.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions for the online portal. Were there any other questions from attendees who haven't had a chance to ask yet? Seeing none, Chuck, did you have one more question?
Yeah, I have.
We can move back for a second round now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna ask another question.
Go for it.
To Representative. Regarding your Bill 2664,
Yes.
I know that I've heard that there was some kind of hesitation from the UH as far as accepting the money to do the stadium there. So where was the stadium gonna be out? Where did you guys envision the stadium?
So yes, UH did publicly testify that they were opposed to it. I don't know if you saw the David Shapiro column recently, where he kind of said, like, you know what, you have to think about UH's standing with the Senate, all due respect. I know you voted for the interim chair, so, but I know it's been a very contentious relationship, we'll just say, between the Senate and the university. So I think they probably felt compelled that they had to say that, because if they jumped on our plan in the House, that would put them in even a worse position with the Senate. So you have to recognize that first and foremost. But as envisioned, the bill would give them about 200 million to basically make permanent what's there now. I don't know if you've been to a game recently. It's a fun environment. Granted, it's more high school than college, not really, you know, worthy of a Division I program. But one of the downsides is it's probably like 100 or 200 porta potties. It's obviously not ideal. We know parking is always tough in the area, but the money could also be used for infrastructure upgrades. There's some portables that kind of surround by the full area, the Continental Pool. UH could, like, you know, kind of reshift some things around there. They could actually add additional layers to the parking deck and the lower floor as well, the garage itself. So there's some flexibility there, but we're not talking about tearing it down and building a brand new one. It's basically just hardening what's there now, because it's basically all temporary features. They'll probably only have another 3 or 4 years of shelf life. So that's the thing.
And the capacity would still remain under 20,000.
That's the thinking. Anywhere, because right now it's about 15,000. They could probably go up to 17,000 or so. One of the concerns before was that the NCAA had this requirement that to maintain to say it's a Division I program, you have to have a 2-year rolling average of 15,000 in attendance. They've actually gotten rid of that requirement. If you know anything about college football, it's all driven by TV money. So that's really where it is. They don't even care about the butts and seats anymore. So that doesn't actually apply to the UH situation as it is. But what they're planning at NASED, the new Aloha Stadium Entertainment District, would be about 25,000. One of the reasons I'm very skeptical about it. You know, it's in an active RFP, so and part of me wants to see what the private developers end up proposing. But the state's put in 400 million. If the developers did not throw in anything else, we're talking about a stadium with bleachers and no roof or anything, no amenities. It's very basic. So the thinking is, oh, if we give private developers development rights around the 70 acres, we'll let them make their money on condos and hotels, commercial, that they'll be willing to pay for the difference. But professional stadiums, they cost over $1 billion easy. Mercedes Stadium in Atlanta, I think was 1.6 billion. SoFi in LA, some looking for the $4 or $5 billion price tag. So I'm very skeptical that there's going to be a developer willing to pay that delta, possibly 400 or 500 million upfront, because that's the first thing they have to deliver is the stadium itself. And then they would have the right to develop the surrounding site over the next 20 years. One of the things that's not getting enough attention is that there's actually inadequate infrastructure on that site, specifically sewer capacity. So any condos around that site aren't going to be approved probably until 2034, another 10 years. So I don't personally see how all this is going to pencil out. So that's why I introduced this bill, because I thought it was worth having that discussion. Because at this point, this is the only chance the legislature has to chime in before the state might enter into a contract.
Thank you. And I want to give Mr. Ping an opportunity to speak on this too.
Oh, sorry, I wanted to actually not address this particular issue, but go back to the round top issue on DLNR.
Then please go ahead with that. Sorry for not calling upon you sooner.
No, that's okay. I didn't chime in at that point. But going back to the issue of overgrown vegetation as well as the signage. The signage I can pass along to DLNR. You're talking about the entrance to the park, it sounds like. So I can definitely ask them to take a look at that and address that appropriately. Regarding the vegetation growth and fire mitigation, as Senator Fukunaga pointed out, the Department of Transportation, who I work for, has agreed to work with any agency, city, state, county, to address fire mitigation and vegetation control purely for safety issues. So if we can get more details on where specifically the overgrown vegetation is, I'd be happy to pass that along to our team who is working on the fire mitigation efforts.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'm going to recognize from the audience, Mr. Eber. Is that right?
Yes, directing to Guardian. My question is on the cannabis bill.
Yes.
One of the mechanics on it, you were going to generate a lot of funds, a lot of money to pay for it and put it into our tax bracket, so we don't have to pay many taxes. But my question is, how are you going to control that? Are you making another department to control it? Secondly, how about healthcare? Have you planned down the road how much healthcare is going to cost us? We already are collecting money from the cigarette industry for cancer. You inhale cannabis just like a cigarette.
The question, would you mind summarizing?
My question is, have you addressed truly those added costs to offset that few bucks you're going to make from the cannabis?
Well, you were addressing,
Yeah,
I'll
just-
recognize Bellotti next, but you.
Okay, sure. No, just to be clear, I'm absolutely opposed to this bill. I'm not supportive of the move to legalize. I believe the mechanism now is for a cannabis authority to be attached to the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs who will look at it. But I think you raise a very good point because, the proponents will say this is going to raise potentially, tens of millions of dollars upon maturity, but they don't talk about the additional social cost the programs will have to fund to help offset some of these impacts. But I'll defer to Representative Bellotti, who's a health chair, who's much more knowledgeable on this issue. We may actually have a different stance on this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Representative.
Is it
Oh,
my
we have-
turn now? Oh,
Yes, please go ahead, Representative.
sure. So the individual asking, I believe the bill that's currently being considered has funding for additional law enforcement, for enforcement by the Office of Cannabis Control and Regulation. And there were projections that there would be increases. I would acknowledge what Representative Garrett said, that there is a lot of opposition and there is a lot of concern. I would say that one of the concerns I have is that this is the only measure that is actually addressing hemp-derived cannabinoid products, which are actually legal. They are currently legal to purchase by 18 years, folks 18 years and older. And so I think that there is, and it's not anything due to state laws. it's because of federal laws that have legalized cannabinoid products throughout the nation. And so we have a huge gap in our public health safety net in addressing cannabinoids and the kind of health effects that we're seeing in our community. And so I think we need to continue to have that conversation about how we address all of the harmful effects of cannabis and how do we protect our community. Whether or not this bill passes, we have to deal with those issues because we know that individuals 18 years and older now can get hemp-derived cannabinoid products that look like things like gummies, pre-rolls, and law enforcement cannot distinguish that from the black market. And so actually it's really difficult right now to enforce against and protect the public health and safety of our community. I will also say for me, and one of the reasons why I was hoping that this bill would get further consideration and further work on it is that it's access to these kinds of products by our youth, who we also know are vaping. And so we don't know what they're vaping at times. So the untested, unregulated cannabis products out there in our community, whether it's black market or otherwise, is dangerous. And so I share those same concerns with you, sir.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much for the robust discussion. And we're about 7:55. I want to make sure in the next 25 minutes or so we can get through the rest of the agenda. But I want to thank our legislators. I'm going to do the same time check I did for everyone else and do 30 seconds of comment. So real briefly. First up, I want to thank our senator for voting for the interim chair for the Board of Regents. I think it was an excellent vote. Also, thanks for calling out the property insurance stabilizing. That's HB 2686. Want to speak in favor of that. Very good stuff. I've been personally testifying in my own capacity. Another bill, HB 470. I've raised this to you, Representative Bellotti. That's the youth homelessness bill. It's now waiting on the House. If the House could move forward and just agree with the Senate draft, I think that would actually be a great maneuver. And then finally, SB 2305. It's going to its final committee, and that's me on for 30 seconds. So thank you so much to our representative, Senator, and to Russell Ping for this robust discussion. And thank you to the board members and the public. With that, we're about to move on to community reports. So first up there is Chuck Lee. So for Chuck Lee, do we have a security report for this month? Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we're still my team is still finalizing some condo dates and our thing with Roosevelt as far as making the presentation. But I did have a safety tip real fast.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, right now, everybody's personal identification is very important to them. And right now, there's some evil people that are out there in the community that are using some devices that can infiltrate a lot of personal computers, telephones, what have you. And basically, it leaves no forensic evidence. So I would highly encourage everybody to be extremely careful with all of your personal information. And, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that have ID protection. So, you know, maybe you should start looking into that also because it's getting to be very dangerous out there.
All right, thank you very much for your report. Do we ever update John Steelquist from the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization?
They've got the draft plan out, it's still being commented on, so they don't need it right away.
Okay, there's a draft plan out. Thank you very much for that and for your fast report. We're now going to move on to resident and community concerns. These are items that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to speak on an item has up to 2 minutes. Do we have any board members or members of the public for resident or community concerns? Hearing none, we're going to move to City and County of Honolulu elected official monthly reports. Is there any opposition from a board member for taking out of order? Because I do want to note we have Councilmember Calvin Say with us, and so I'm inclined to let him go first as he's here in person. Any opposition? Yeah. Okay. Please come in. Go ahead. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate seeing you in person.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity of being here this evening. I really enjoyed the thorough discussion that you folks all had. Let me start off by responding to some of the concerns that were voiced. For the young man in the back, in regards to the regulations, yes. There's over 8+ different types of regulations when you start developing a condominium or apartment. First and foremost, you've got to get a stormwater permit. Second, you got to get a water supply allocation. Third, you've got to get Department of Environmental Services that ties it in with sewer systems. Then you go to the state, folks recall the school impact fee. If you're close to a school, if you're building a building, you have to not compensated, you have to pay a fee for school. Third, park dedication fee also. Next, the building permit process that we go through with DPP and also now fire permits. These are all the permits that were promoted by our constituency for the health and safety of our residents. If any of these want to be repealed or exempt, you would save a lot of money in the construction side, but do you have the safety to it? And that's a big issue. The EVA Mental Health Crisis Center, the mayor has done a great job in seeing that that facility is up to par. Condominium safety, I'm going through a lot right now, being the zoning committee chair. And when I say this, it's very sincere and honest because at this point in time, the question that is being posed to me and the zoning committee members, safety versus finance. What you folks want? That's the tough question to ask. And that's where we are trying to do our very best. And for the life safety evaluation, what can I say? You just added more cost to your insurance premiums, but not qualifying. You call a spade a spade. And finally, I've been criticized this past year and a half. How come you not being very honest as far as transparent? What do you mean transparent? Oh, Hawaii revised statutes, 201H. They give us 45 days to approve an application by state law. And we've made a request from 45 days, make it 60 or 75 days. Why? To give the public the opportunity of understanding the particular project. Next, I'd like to go and say to all of you, boy, you guys give me a lot of work. Ogawa, roadside maintenance. Springer, overgrown grass on Tantalus Drive. Ogawa, grass and weeds on Tantalus Drive, Papakolea to the top of Tantalus. Howell, Makiki Garden Park, he was here last month. Carrie, homeless at Kulana Ale. Jordan, homeless at Liho Street Bridge. Overgrown trees from Janelle. Overgrown trees need to be trimmed by an overhead utility line on Farrington Street at this point in time. William, potential monster home being built on 1689 Levalani Street. And I'm happy to see Mr. Sasaki and Mr. Kojima here as part of the board meeting because they've been very active with my staff in going and visiting the sites up at Tantalus and the Makiki Drive. Next, we have illegal dumping at 1138 Passenger Street. Permit to follow up in regards to Inha Park. You guys know where Inha Park is, all of you? Or there's a homeless encampment right on King Street next to the Department of Agriculture building. Next, we have another one, the cracks and dangerous potholes on sidewalks on B. Boy Street. And then Mr. Hugh again, Ray and Paula in regards to the illegal dumping on Makiki Heights Drive. We have worked with the state also in regards to the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Mr. Barry, I'll just give you the first name. We worked with the Department of Facility Maintenance, which is the city. And the city has done a lot in trying to address all of these illegal dumpings, even though it may be in the jurisdiction of the state. Let us work together for the greater good. Praise of the fountains of Makiki Neighborhood Board in regards to the issue of racers again, up the heights. And these are part of the requests that I get every month, which I'm happy to respond to you folks. And Mr. Everhart just sent me a note to look into it.
But I have to say that this past month and a half has been very, very enjoyable, but very frustrating. As a zoning committee chair, you know, I have a lot of the applications that come before the committee on the 201H measures, these special management areas for the shoreline management, setbacks, et cetera. And these are individual property owners requesting that they get the permits to build. And sometimes it's very, very difficult because a lot of times they're having a hard time getting, you know what, permit, all of you? Shifting. Shifting is the state historic preservation law that we have on the books. And if you have the shoreline, that's where a lot of the EVs are, or the kupunas, the bone. So all of this adds to the length of a processes going in place, applying for a building permit, and going through all of that. But other than that, yeah, we had a big 2-hour discussion in regards to the House Bill 1630, House Draft 1, and Senate Bill 3202, Senate Draft 2, relating to urban development. This was discussed earlier this evening, and that's great. But well, let me say this. This bill will now allow 3 or 4 homes on a 10,000 square foot unit or a 20,000 square foot unit. And I think all of you are aware that I don't think it could be done because a lot of residents in Kaimaki had a lot of their applications refused and disapproved because they couldn't get the hookup on what? Sewer or ADU, accessory dwelling unit. We have tried, the city, their best in trying to come up with ways. Accessory dwelling units, Ohana zoning, just goes on and on and on. But it's fun because this is the evolution of our county. And today we had a great discussion with this particular measure that the resolution that Chair Waters had introduced along with Vice Chair Kiaina was to say resolution expressing the city county in strong opposition to those measures. And why? These are now residential zone properties that may be converted to almost like a semi-apartment. That's the scary part. And I can understand that they all believe in, you know, having more affordable housing. But at the end of the day, talking to a lot of different families, different residents, and testifiers, you know, Mr. Say, whatever you're adopting as building permits and development, it's not affordable. So I said, what is affordable? The city is 120 AMI and below. The state is 140 average median income and below. And we're trying to focus now on the 60% AMI and below. At 30%, it becomes Palolo housing, which I grew up with, family and friends. Public housing. That's what we're dealing with today. And I can sympathize with these young ones here because it is their future that they can stay here in Hawaii rather than migrate to the mainland. But it's so tough because you understand the financing. Understand the financing. Let's say you and I bought a studio for 400,000, or we got the approval. Now we go to the bank. We're making 80,000 a year. 30% is already deducted for taxes. That leaves you with, you know, let's say from 80,000, 30,000, 50,000 for all expenses. Then your mortgage. What's happening also is this, Ian. We cannot control insurance. That's going to be a big issue that's added to your cost. You cannot control banking, interest rates. But I am committed, I am concerned, not for Calvin Say, but for the future generation, for Ian folks. Logan folks, because you folks are the young ones. I don't want you folks to. And that's the difficulty I'm facing today. I tell a lot of the old timers, Richard, I like to go back to the old days. Hey, we're going to do single wall homes with total roof. Why you laugh, Chuck? That's how people were brought up. That's the simple life. Everything today is double wall. And for the condos, it's so expensive because of what is happening in the pricing of concrete. So as you add all of these things up, I'm really trying to figure out a way out. We can finance 60% AMI projects and below. Because to get a 60% AMI project and below, you've got to get market units also to subsidize the 60% of the cost of the unit. And that's the dilemma that I face and members of the council face. But more importantly, other topics, hey, we're doing our best with public safety in supporting EMS, medical examiners, ocean safety, etc. Police, we're supporting them a tremendous amount. And I think, and I don't know yet until we find out if the council has the votes for the 25,000 for recruitments. See, all of these we're trying to figure out how can we provide the services that the residents also want. So at this time, I'll shut my mouth, respond to questions.
Okay, we're going to take questions from board members first. Any board members with questions?
I'm having fun.
Claire, please go ahead.
In the realm of zoning and affordable housing, and on all that Bill 7 and building anything
Right.
they want, put up a tower in a historic preservation zone. I've noticed something in a building across the street from me that was affordable, and affordable is not affordable for most income levels here. People start having other people moving in with them. So if you've got 20 units, you don't have 20 people or 40 people, you've got 60 people. Because all their friends are coming in. It's like creating ghetto life. It's just not a realistic model in my opinion.
And Claire, and I agree with you. That's the concern I have. But, the other big issue for the city and county of Honolulu today, very honestly, the state cannot demand all services be put up on HPD. Who does the enforcement? So like 2 weeks ago at the hearing, I told Mr. John Pigeon of Ocean Safety, if you guys want to create a department, you folks be open and taking on more responsibility. And he said, what kind of responsibility? Park rangers. We need park rangers at the beach because of all the illegal commercial activities.
HPD.
Well, you see, that's the whole point. You want HPD off of the streets, down to the beach now?
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying to you folks, it's such a difficult journey that we are all facing. And earlier, what Carol and Andrew and Della said is true. We're all coming together now, and I think we are. With the mayor and the governor working together, with the council and the legislature working together, I think we'll get things done.
Any other questions from board members at this time?
Can I go?
Um,
I'm kidding.
I actually do think we have to move on in the agenda, but council member, thank you very much. We also had fun with you today.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think you gave some valuable county end to the discussion that we had earlier. Do we have anyone?
I raised my hand a while ago.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand, Corinne. Please go ahead, Corinne. We'll do one more question.
Yeah, I just wondered, since you're on the zoning committee and you deal with all these applications, I've just noticed since I've lived in Honolulu, as well as other cities, a real shortage of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom apartments of any kind. And I guess I just wondered, there are still people who have multi-generational living situations or they have children. And is there anything that can be done to encourage building of 2- and 3-bedroom apartments? That's all.
Corinne, if you ever do that 2 or 3 bedrooms, you'll probably double or triple the cost of a particular unit. That's all I can say. And that's why you mandated, not mandated, but requested if the developers can do more studios or 1-bedrooms also. And then in between the gap, it's a 2. 3-bedroom would be a family at that point. And that's where you get all the market condominiums. You know where, gang? It's not in MakikiLower, Paris, all in Kaka'ako. And the public doesn't differentiate. How come you guys building all of this, Calvin? That's HCDA. Hawaii Community Development Authority. So that's where things are at the state and county level, but we are working together for the greater good.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay,
All right, next up, Robin, from City Council Member Tyler DeSantos Tam's office.
Hey everyone.
How's it going?
It's going great. It's been a great meeting so far. So yeah, I put our newsletter in the chat for March of 2024. It displays the legislation we've introduced so far. We've introduced 7 bills. so you can kind of explore our legislative initiatives we have so far. I did want to mention and thank Chair Ross for helping to support and address the illegal game rooms. That legislation is still going on, so I wanted to say thank you for that. I wanted to mention there will be a park cleanup at Dole Community Park on March 30th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and the Downtown Rotary Club will be hosting that. And then just a little tidbit: the mayor is hosting town halls all across the island. And for our district, District 6, the update will be Thursday, April 18th at 6:30 p.m. at K.A. Leolani Middle School. So yes, those were my updates. But if anyone has any questions, let me know.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions from board members? Any question? Oh, you have one? So, any questions from any other attendees? Hearing none, thank you so much, and I'll just speak on my as chair here. Thank you so much for helping us keep our parks clean in our community. Definitely very appreciated. I attended the last Dole Park cleanup, and I think it really made a difference. And I hope this one does as well. All right, we're going to move on to board business. We have about 10 minutes until we actually really want to be out of here. I'm just going to give that flag that for everyone. First up, we have the actually, Logan, would you mind reporting to us on the letters from board members? That's something you can do?
Yeah, so these are for the next two agenda items. There was a 7 absence letters sent out for board member Jenny Lakalaka Manapuna. That's the whole term. And then there were 3 absence letters sent out for board members Elena Farden, who actually put in her resignation today before the meeting.
Yep.
And then also a 3 absence letter for member Salasa, who's here in person. I have mine.
Okay, as a board, do we want to take any action? Oh, do we have a quorum?
We do have quorum at this time. Before we take any actions, usually best to, just for Eric, since he's here to give him a chance to speak over.
Sure. But if we would probably only need anyone to speak on if there's any inclination to take action. Don't you like the?
Well, yeah, but the action is just, I guess I would just say it's good to let people explain themselves.
That sounds good. Okay, so we're gonna take the recommendation from Logan. So as Jeannie's not here, Eric, would you like to speak?
Yes. So for my recent absence last month, I was on an outer island trip to Lanai, and the reception is very, very bad. So for me to log in to WebEx didn't work out as I planned. So I do wish to remain on the board if willing, if everyone is willing. I would really appreciate that because I feel my voice here can be of benefit to our community because I want to see the best for our community, and I just want to always advocate for health and safety of our community. And I enjoy our home, and I want to make it more beautiful than I have found it. So that's my agenda, and that's why I would like to remain on the board.
Good, thank you very much. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, my general position is we not expel anybody. If anything, we're just short. And like this one person, like Jerry, when she hasn't, yeah, that's my position, that we not expel anybody, though they've been absent for all these things.
Okay, anyone else want to speak on it? Yes, please go ahead. Yep. And then I'll take online next.
I just wanted to know, okay, Jerry's, yeah, did she have any dialogue with any of you in the neighborhood commission?
Only me, be careful.
I haven't had any phone calls. I've never met her. I don't believe that she's contacted the NCO directly.
So, Chair, does she want to be on the board? Because if she doesn't want to be on the board, then we're wasting a space where somebody else could come on if she doesn't.
She's highlighted interest to me. I'm not sure what I can discuss directly. I'll just say it's medical and family. I'm not very, it's extremely clear on which parts I should share or not.
If I could just say something briefly, the board has actually had a super easy time filling vacancies recently. So I'm not encouraging anyone to make a motion, but you guys have a vacancy next month, and yeah, you guys haven't had any trouble filling the slots once they become available.
Okay. Well, I'm not hearing any motions at this time, but this is something for us to all consider. I'm glad we were able to take a moment to like discuss it. Oh, wait, sorry, I did see a hand. So was there a hand up online?
Yes.
Please go ahead, Corinne.
So I don't know Jerry's situation, obviously, but the fact that she has never been to a single board meeting and we've had several meetings without quorum, I find a little upsetting. And I wonder if she would be willing to at least like give us a written, response. So like someone could reach out to her and maybe we could say, tell us next time like what your plan is going forward, or some kind of request that she, come up with like an ETA on when she can start participating. Otherwise, I would be in favor of moving to remove her in the future.
Thank you so much. Richard?
I would say, so if somebody does express an interest, they want her seat, at that point, I would say.
I would note that often the inverse is true, right? People see the vacancy and then usually the following month they express interest. But can we know what sub-district she's in?
Yes. Penny is a member of Sub-District 3.
I'll note sometimes people express interest to me. No one from Sub-District 3 has expressed interest at this time. We did get an expression of interest at the last meeting for Sub-District 2, though, and a vacancy just opened up. I'll note that.
I got reached out to someone as well.
Two?
From either 1 or 3, I can't remember, but it was not 2.
It's not 2. Thomas, did you have something you wish to add?
Just that I am not necessarily hard support of vacating, but if someone is physically unable to show up to the meeting, they are occupying a space that could be held by someone who right now is able to. I'm not necessarily disappointed or upset if something outside of someone's control is affecting their life and keeping them from coming here, but I don't think it's pragmatic to just hold on to that seat for that person and wait for their situation to improve. If that seat is vacant when they're able to come back, then I'd be open to bringing them back onto the board. That's those are my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you very much. I'm going to recognize Tom Heinrich at this time.
Tom, you're muted.
Okay, I'm gonna move on that then. Thank you very much for the robust discussion. I don't hear a motion at this time, but I certainly heard all the comments clearly. And I'm going to take it in my own prerogative to reach out. Okay, we're gonna move on then. Motion to establish new committees. Is there any motion at this time to establish a new committee? We did, for example, hear potential interest in a committee or a PIG, which we can't do at this time, related to legislative affairs. You recognize at this time, Thomas.
Chair, maybe just because of the lack of time to discuss, I would like to see that agenda item on a future agenda for the neighborhood board, wherever appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we're going to move on then. Approval of regular meeting minutes. We have several. September, October, November, January, February. Do we have any motions to adopt minutes?
Move we adopt all the minutes presented.
I believe we can do this, right?
Yeah, we can do them all one motion.
Okay, very good. I recognize Nathan.
Again.
Recognize Nathan first, so we'll get the second from Nathan. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to seek unanimous consent. Is anyone opposed or abstaining from this motion? If you're online, this is when you would unmute and speak up. Hearing none? Okay, the motion passes. Next item, approval of the joint special meeting minutes, November 14th, 2023. We were seconds too late. I just saw that Robin left. We were getting assistance from Councilmember Tyler DeSantos Tam's office on these minutes. My understanding is that a draft exists somewhere, and there are requests to see these minutes. It was a very important meeting. I think it was very productive. So I will be following up to see where we're at on a draft for that. Next up, approval, reminder for other outstanding committee meeting minutes. Logan, do you have a statement on this?
Yeah, so this is just coming from my office. We're just trying to catch up on everyone's committee meeting minutes from, at least from last year. Even if we get something in, just so that way you guys can approve them and be done with them. I have the homelessness committee from March, from March, April, and June of last year, 2023. I think, Richard, you were the chair at that time. And then I also have the Neighborhood Security Watch, March 2023, which I believe, Chuck, that was the 1 month you guys had that committee. And then, yeah, I just had the special game rooms, that you just mentioned.
Great, thank you very much. It's very helpful. Yes, please go ahead.
I tried to do this, but it was getting pretty complex. Can I just send something real quick without following all the guidelines? Who was there? Who spoke?
I can double check on that. I believe that there are some requirements in terms of attendance and how it's organized, but as long as you submit something with some kind of notes and what was gone over in the meeting, that's substantial, as long as the board would then approve it. Yeah.
My limited recollection on it is when it was convened, when it ended, people in attendance, and any motions taken, which has always been no motions taken. And then some sort of, I think you have to correlate what the official agenda was and probably relist agenda headers. And I think that's the only requirements under Robert's rules that exist. I might have to double check, but that's at least most of the requirements right there.
I can follow up with Richard and with Chuck. I'll send you guys the requirements for what the minutes should be.
Okay, 8:25, we're moving on to announcements. The next regular meeting is on April 18th at 6 p.m. here at Makiki Industry Park and online via WebEx. Broadcast, the meeting can be viewed on Alelo Focus 49 at 9 p.m. on the first Friday of the month, and again on the first and third Sunday at 3 p.m. For social media, you can follow us at facebook.com/Makiki letters NB. Please note, as of today, we changed the name of the page, but did not change the URL. So that's facebook.com/Makiki and the letters NB. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we are adjourned this meeting at 8:25 p.m. All right, good job, team. Thank you so much to our community attendees.
Good night, everybody.
Live aloha, everyone.
Thanks.